What's up, Roadrunners? My name is Enrique Medina, and we welcome you back to this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. In this week's episode, we give you the latest on some of the week's best performances in the NBA, more on the most anticipated league game of the season in soccer, more on Major League Baseball action, and the latest NFL rumors swirling around. We also bring to you another segment of the Sportsrunner Digest. We have this and more in this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. Before we head into Sportsrunner Weekly though, for this week, we wanted to inform you guys that from here on out, we will be giving you guys a weekly discussion with the Sportsrunner Digest, but expect the Sportsrunner Spotlight to be more than likely be held every other week from here on out. That does not mean that we can have an interview each and every week for the Sportsrunner Spotlight, but that's just how things may be best suited for our team at this very moment in time. But with that out of the way, we begin our show with our weekly recaps with Sportsrunner Weekly. Justin, out to you with the latest on NBA news.
Hello, my name is Justin Gomez, and I'm here for your weekly NBA recap. First up, we have Kevin Durant not missing a single shot in his return versus the Pelicans, going 5 for 5 and having a total of 17 points. Next up, we have Stephen Curry carrying the Golden State Warriors to a victory over the Milwaukee Bucks, which is a top team in the Eastern Conference. Curry dropped a total of 41 points, with 30 of those points coming in the second half. Next up, we have the third seed in the Western Conference and the Los Angeles Clippers taking on the number 2 seed in the Western Conference in the Phoenix Suns. In this matchup, the Clippers were victorious, with Kawhi Leonard dropping 27 points and Paul George dropping 33 points. Next, we have Zach LaVine of the Chicago Bulls dropping a total of 50 points against the Atlanta Hawks. Despite this 50-point performance, the Chicago Bulls were unable to beat the Atlanta Hawks, with Trae Young having a total of 42 points, carrying his team to victory. Another insane performance we had this week was Jason Tatum dropping a career high of 53 points against the Minnesota Timberwolves. In this matchup, the Boston Celtics were able to take home the W in an insane OT thriller. Finally, we had the matchup of the week between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets. Despite 4 out of the 5 star players from the Brooklyn Nets playing in this game, all of them except James Harden, the Los Angeles Lakers were able to take home the victory this week. Despite not having LeBron James or Anthony Davis in this matchup, the Lakers were able to take home this victory due to the fact that all their starters had double-digit points, as well as 3 players off the bench. This well-run performance was able to take home the victory for the Los Angeles Lakers. My name is Justin Gomez, and this has been your weekly NBA recap.
Thank you, Justin, for the latest on NBA news. We now take things to you, Fernando, with the latest on soccer. Fernando, out to you.
Hello, sports runners. My name is Fernando Ramos, and in this week's episode, we'll be covering the Clasico between Barcelona and Real Madrid. This weekend, we saw the most anticipated game of the season, the Clasico of all Clásicos. We saw a title decider between Barcelona and Real Madrid. The 2020-2021 La Liga season is one of the most tightest races we've seen in recent years. The 3 La Liga giants, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and Real Madrid, are neck and neck, and with only 6 games left in the La Liga season, there's no room for error. With Atletico Madrid at 67 points, Real Madrid at 66, and Barcelona at 65 points, titles for anyone to take. Real Madrid came into this game with lots of injuries, most notably to their captain Sergio Ramos, Rafa Varane, Dani Carvajal, and Eden Hazard. Even though Real Madrid have a lot of injuries, they're still fighting for the Champions League and La Liga, but most worried that they wouldn't have the legs to compete against Barcelona. However, this is not the case. Real Madrid countered everything that Barcelona threw at them as they played a near-perfect game. Barcelona had the majority of the possession, however that's expected from a Barcelona side, yet they weren't able to do anything with that possession. The first goal was scored by French striker Karim Benzema from a counter-attack which saw the Barcelona defense out of position. The second goal was scored by German midfielder Toni Kroos from a free kick after it took 2 deflections before hitting the back of the net. Barcelona were able to get a goal back in the second half from La Masia graduate Oscar Mingueza through a cross from Lionel Messi. Real Madrid defensive midfielder Casemiro got sent off in the 90th minute with the scoreline at 2-1. However, it was too late for Barcelona to bring the game back. The game finished 2-1 for Real Madrid as they now jump over Barcelona on the table and are now just 1 point behind Atletico Madrid with 6 games left for the season. The title can be anybody's. This was it for this week's section. Now on to the next sport.
Thank you, Fernando, for the latest on soccer news. But now we switch things on to baseball and the MLB, and now we can officially say that baseball is ahead of us for a full season all the way to the end of October. With that said, we have lots of news and action to cover from this week's set of games. And with that said, let's get straight into things. The first news we have from this week actually comes from the MLB itself and their picking of the 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game site. As I did mention last week, Atlanta, Georgia will no longer have this year's Major League Baseball All-Star Game due to the new voting restriction laws in the state of Georgia. With that said, the MLB finally found their site for this year's All-Star Game, which so happens to be Denver, Colorado, Coors Field, the home of the Colorado Rockies. A stadium that's already known for its true favorable conditions for hitters. You can only imagine the high amount of offense that we could potentially see in the All-Star Game. Also, along with that, you can only think of the mammoth home runs that we might see during the Home Run Derby, so that will be a lot of fun. We switch on to game action, but first we go to Chavez Ravine, Dodgers Stadium, and the Dodgers 2021 home season opener. Of course, as you may recall, last season's world champions defeated the Tampa Bay Rays in 6 games to win their first World Series championship since all the way back in 1988. And of course, with that said, the Dodgers had their pre-game championship ring ceremony prior to their home opener against the Washington Nationals. And we saw a lot of really, truly amazing and cool moments from the ring ceremony. We saw the longest tenured Dodger, 13-year veteran and future Hall of Famer Clayton Kershaw finally receive his first World Series ring. We also saw Dodger fans finally see Mookie Betts for the first time after he did sign his 12-year contract extension prior to last season. Of course, he was not able to actually see fans in the stands last year due to COVID-19 and the pandemic-shortened season. But we saw a lot of really cool moments, some standing ovations for Corey Seager, Julio Urias, and other players from the championship team. And soonly after, we saw the raising of the 2020 championship banners for the boys in blue and the new 2020 World Series sign, along with the other teams' championships down the right field line. A lot of amazing moments, but the team also had work to get done, of course, which was play their series against the Nationals. As for their performance in the series and on the field, the Dodgers still have not shown any signs of slowing down from last year's championship. No World Series hangover as of now for the boys in blue. The Dodgers swept the Nationals in their opening series, which did put the two most recent World Series champions against each other. The Dodgers now have the best record in the MLB up to this point in the young season with an 8-2 record. Staying in the NL West, we move into news coming from San Diego with the San Diego Padres. Last Monday, we had very scary news for Padres fans. As for them, their star shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. left their game on Monday night early against the San Francisco Giants after taking a vicious swing on a 2-2 Anthony Desclafani pitch. Tatis would be further evaluated and results would show. Tatis suffered a subluxation in his left shoulder and a partial tear of his labrum, also on that same left shoulder. Luckily for Tatis and Padres fans everywhere, this injury does not seem as harsh and as bad as we thought it was, and surgery is not required after Tatis talked with experts. You know, it's so good news that the Padres are already expecting Tatis to be back somewhere around this week. But for Padres fans, despite the bummer with the Fernando Tatis Jr. injury situation, they still had plenty to cheer about this week, especially on the field, of course. Joe Musgrove, San Diego's own, who was acquired from the Pittsburgh Pirates this offseason via trade, made team history on Friday night from Texas in Arlington. The El Cajon native, who grew up roughly around 15 miles from San Diego and who grew up a huge Padres fan, threw the team's first no-hitter in team history. A true dream come true for Musgrove. Musgrove no-hit the Texas Rangers on Friday night, striking out 10 Rangers hitters And the last out was a ground out to short as the team dogpiled and celebrated with Musgrove on the mound. The Padres were indeed the last Major League franchise without a no-hitter in the respective team's history, until now, of course, and San Diego's Joe Musgrove will forever have that to his name. In other really interesting and crazy news from this week, we saw opposing fans at it again against the Houston Astros. This week, the Houston Astros visited the Los Angeles Angels at Angel Stadium, where we actually saw a fan throw an inflatable trash can on the field during the game. And yeah, I said that right. Obviously, the fans throughout, and as we expect throughout the season, will show their displeasure because of the Astros' 2017 World Series title, where they were later found to have been cheating by stealing signs electronically. So, naturally so, Angels fans showed their displeasure by throwing an actual inflatable trash can onto the field. Away from that craziness, though, comes another feel-good story. I did mention last week that Trey Mancini from the Baltimore Orioles returned to Major League Baseball action for the first time since defeating colon cancer, and we can say that he finally made his first game back at Camden Yards at the Baltimore Orioles home stadium for his return, his long-awaited return in front of the Orioles faithful. And in that team's first homestand of the year, he received a standing ovation, and even more than that, actually hit 2 home runs during the homestand. In other highlights from this week, we saw the Tigers rookie Akil Baddoo hit a home run in his first Major League at-bat, with his parents actually watching in the stands. And we also saw Baddoo absolutely scorch big league pitching throughout the Tigers' opening homestand. This week, we also saw the Chicago White Sox newest pitching acquisition, Lance Lynn, throw baseball's first complete game shutout this season, shutting out the Kansas City Royals in a 6-0 win, one in which he struck out 11 Royals hitters on the night. We also saw the first home runs of the year from Washington Nationals superstar phenom Juan Soto against the Dodgers this weekend. And this week, we also did see one of the oddest ways that you'll ever see a game end, as the New York Mets game on Thursday ended after Michael Conforto, he had looked like he struck out on strike 3, but the umpire later noticed that he was hit by the pitch and actually gave him the free pass with the bases loaded for the Mets to win the ball game. After a week and a half into the young season, our current division leaders looks as so. The Boston Red Sox currently lead the American League East. The Cleveland Indians right now are currently leading the AL Central. As for the AL West, we have a 2-way tie between the Los Angeles Angels and Houston Astros. As for the National League, we see the Philadelphia Phillies currently leading the NL East. We see the Cincinnati Reds right now currently leading the NL Central, and the reigning World Series champions Los Angeles Dodgers currently with baseball's best record leading the National League Western Division. With that said, Roadrunners, that officially puts an end to this week's baseball segment for Sportsrunner Weekly. I'm Enrique Medina. I now throw things out to you, Luke, with more on football.
What's up, Roadrunners? It is almost time for the NFL Draft. It will be taking place April 29th and lasts till May 1st. During this time of the year, this is when sports media gets really loud and NFL coverage gets really low. During this time, a whole bunch of mock drafts are being thrown out there on the internet, whether it's sports media or fans alike. There's a lot of speculation of who will get what hidden gems are in the draft, what players who are top 10 might be a bust or might be a boom. We're going to see if the hype is real for some of these players, and we're going to see if any news comes out that these players aren't who they actually are. With that being said, the second round of pro days starts. So the first pro days is when an athlete is able to play and do drills and show off their talents at their college's facility. But now NFL teams are able to go to their pro days, get to check them out, maybe even ask these athletes to do certain type of drills to get a better feel of what these athletes could bring to the table. It'll be very interesting. After the second round pro days, we'll learn more about these athletes, see if the hype is real or not, and just more speculation, trying to bring players, even to make players drop down so a team could pick them up instead of having them be a top 10 pick, which happens a lot. It's very slow right now. Like I said, NFL teams are trying to keep it real quiet. They don't really want a lot of people to know who they may be targeting. Although, of course, we have a very good idea of who can go number one, which is Trevor Lawrence, quarterback for Clemson. He might go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But crazier things have happened in the draft, so we're just going to have to wait and see. And another really cool news that happened in NFL is that NFL owners are going to agree on the NFL number change. So as we know, NFL is sometimes called the No Fun League. They're very strict on their rules, and that even includes numbers. So as we know in college football, different positions could wear single-digit numbers, but in the NFL that doesn't really work. The only single-digit positions that could wear that are quarterbacks, kickers, and punters. But now anyone could really wear it. So for running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, they could wear 1 through 49 or 80 through 89. Defensive backs like corners and safeties can wear 1 through 49, and linebackers could wear 1 through 49 plus 90 through 99, and quarterbacks and kickers could wear 1 through 19. I guess this is pretty cool. Like, they're kind of going with the times, like, hey, we're kind of boring, so we should at least let the players be able to express themselves. And of course, players have gone crazy on the social media. They're wearing their old numbers that they used to wear in college. So we may or may not see some new numbers out there for some of our favorite players. It's only a matter of time till we find out if the NFL will allow throwbacks. As of right now, they have a number rule where they have a helmet rule. My bad. They have a helmet rule where only teams can have one color helmet, and by doing that, it kind of kills the attempt for teams to wear a throwback because they'll have their current helmet with an old school jersey. Uh, this number change sounds like they may be, relaxing on these rules, so we may see some throwback uniforms very soon. Other than that, that is your NFL news, and thank you for tuning in to the Sports Runner.
A lot of great news from this week's weekly recaps, but let's get to hear a little bit more from the subjects that we talked about in Sportsrunner Weekly with the Sportsrunner Digest. Hello, Roadrunners, and we welcome you back to this week's segment of the Sportsrunner Digest, where we digest some of that information that you just heard in Sportsrunner Weekly and our weekly recaps in more depth and detail. We weren't able to make it together for a talk last week, but we're back and ready to give you guys more information and discussion for this week. So with that said, Justin, I'll leave the floor with you with NBA news.
Yep. So this week, the Los Angeles Lakers were actually able to beat the Brooklyn Nets despite not having LeBron James or Anthony Davis. And, Brooklyn Nets, they still had 4 out of the 5 star players playing. They had everyone but James Harden. And, finally, the Lakers supporting cast finally showed life. I think 8 of the players had double-digit points. Andre Drummond showed out. He had 20 points, 11 rebounds, had himself a double-double. So it's just good to see the Lakers finally showing life here in the regular season. And I just want to know, what you guys think. Is this good news for the Lakers heading forward? Or, do you think it's, too early to tell?
I think the big takeaway from that is the overall production from everybody. We obviously know that the bench and the supporting cast is a crucial part in an NBA title run. And hopefully games like this where they produce, especially considering this is the Brooklyn Nets, they're probably the best constructed team in the NBA at the moment. Considering they're doing this amount of production against them, I feel like it just really helps boost their confidence a lot. And I think that's definitely the biggest takeaway. If they continue this overall production, there's no reason to believe that they could potentially win another title once AD and LeBron come back into the lineup. So huge takeaway. Needs to continue continuously, even when LeBron and AD do come back.
I agree with Enrique. Like you said, Enrique, the whole point in basketball is to have a good supporting cast behind you. People come in, rotate the team. And what I really want to take away from it is that they've proven that they can do it without LeBron and AD. And like you said, the Nets are one of the best constructed team in the league this season. And to show that they can do it without LeBron and Nets says a lot about the team in general.
Justin, I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on it. Do you think this result would have been different if James Harden was in the lineup?
I personally don't think so. Like it was an issue of like they didn't have their star players. They still had Kyrie, Kevin Durant. They were still in there. I don't think James Harden would have made much of a difference. I think maybe it would have been a closer game, but like for the most part,
Yeah,
Lakers were ahead by a lot the whole game.
yeah, and
So I don't think it would have made a difference.
you also have to think some of those shots that Harden potentially would have taken away from maybe some shots from KD or Kyrie or so on. So I mean, still, there is that question of that what if scenario if things could have been different. But I'm gonna be super pumped to see how things kind of go the rest of the way for the Lakers once LeBron and AD do come back, and just to see how that Nets team continues to mesh together with all those almost superstars you could say that they have. They're just flat out stacked. So it's going to be interesting to see how both teams progress. And especially, I feel like this year both conferences are really a lot more competitive than they have been in the past.
Well, that's what I was gonna bring up. I was gonna mention to you, Justin. Like how Enrique has mentioned that the Nets have all these superstars, but they couldn't beat the Lakers without AD and Brown. Do you think that's gonna be like a continuing form that they have, or do you think it's just gonna be like a one game mess up?
I think the Nets still need to like get that chemistry right. They're still kind of new with each other. They're all used to being like the ball in their hand type of players. But I think they still need to figure out like how they want to play as a team. So right now it's going to be like a little rocky, but I think later down the line, like toward playoff time, they'll be ready and to go against these top teams.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be really interesting to see how that team meshes together. And like I mentioned, when LeBron and AD come back to the Lakers, and just the whole NBA, like the NBA world, just to see how it progresses as the playoffs do come near in the future. But let's move on into our soccer news. And Fernando, what do you have for us?
So this past weekend we had the most anticipated game of the year, Barcelona versus Real Madrid, the Clasico. And not only this game was important just because of how big it is, it had a huge effect on the title race. Atletico were 13 points behind in front of Barcelona Madrid, sorry, a few months ago, and they've let the lead slip. Now Atletico are just 1 point ahead of Real Madrid and 2 points behind Barcelona. So there's only 6 games left of the season. Anything can happen. 1 game lost for both Atletico or Real Madrid. Barcelona can leap over, or vice versa. So there's really no room for error right now. Real Madrid came into the game with a lot of injuries. Rafa Varane had COVID. Sergio Ramos, their captain, is out. Even Dani Carvajal is out injured. Eden Hazard. They have a lot of players injured, big players also. So you would think that Barcelona were gonna go into this game with an advantage, but they just didn't go. They didn't have it this game. Barcelona had most of the possession, which is normal from a Barcelona side. They have 60-70% of possession most games. But every time they had the ball, Real Madrid just pressed, they counter pressed, they counter attacks, everything was perfect. They had a perfect game. Even the players that came on to replace Sergio Ramos and Rafa Varane, they played an excellent game. They stopped Lionel Messi, they stopped Ousmane Dembele. There's not really much to take from Barcelona's game. They really need to improve if they want to take the league this season. But like I said, even though they're not doing their best right now, any slip up from Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid can have Barcelona leap forward.
Yeah, and I think something I don't think you mentioned too, but Lucas Vazquez actually got hurt, and that's a potential. They were mentioning that it's probably going to end the season. So, in regards to the actual title race, going into this week, the big headlines around Real Madrid is that wow, this could potentially be the biggest week of the season, because first you have Liverpool in the Champions League, and then you have next game right after, a few days later, Barcelona and Clasico, which could be a huge turning point in the title race. And 2 huge victories for Real Madrid. First in that Liverpool game where they won 3-1 at home, and then now 2-1 in the Clasico. But I honestly can't really, even though you can't say it's like a potential season-changing game, I still can't really full on seeing it being like the full-out difference maker, because you can't stay complacent. You have to continue to be consistent. You still got to put your foot on the gas, and Real Madrid can't let that mentality kind of get in their way. You can't be complacent at this point. Same thing for Barcelona. Even though they're out of the Champions League, you feel like they have more to play for because this is all they have left, essentially. All they have left is the league. Real Madrid still has the Champions League to worry about, potentially getting into the semifinal if they get past Liverpool this upcoming week. I'd say more pressure on Barcelona. I think from Real Madrid's standpoint, they just can't stay complacent. But there's more pressure, in my opinion, for Barcelona to actually perform and get themselves closer to potentially winning the league.
Well, Barcelona still have the Copa del Rey final to look forward to. So they have the game, I think it's next week against Atletico Bilbao.
That's true, yeah, you're right.
They still have a competition to win. Obviously, Ronald Koeman, Joan Laporta, the new president, wants to win everything they have to play for this season. But I really want to give credit to Real Madrid. I think I saw an article this morning. They said they had 55 injuries this season alone. And for them to be still competing in the Champions League and in the top of the league right now, or second in the league right now, I think it's unbelievable. You got to give Zidane a lot of credit for it, for his management, for the way he sets out his team for each game.
Yeah,
it's just something that we haven't seen Ronald Koeman do or Diego Simeone do towards the end of the season. You see it more from Koeman now than in the start when he first got here, but it's the opposite for Diego Simeone. Diego Simeone for Atletico had an amazing start to the season. They were, like I said, 13 points clear a few months ago, and now they're 1 point ahead only. So it's gonna be close. It's gonna be close. Like I mentioned, you can't really have any slip ups now. Whoever takes advantage of it can take it.
Yeah, honestly, it's just a last sprint. See who wins it. You can't let anything slip up. You can't get distracted. It's a 3-team race right now to the end, to the finish line. I think from Real Madrid's standpoint, the most crucial part of their team at this moment, I'd have to say, is the midfield. Because Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, and obviously Casemiro, they're kind of running by them. If anything happens with them in like the next month or so, where one of them gets injured, that could really be a
Change everything. Yeah,
that could really change everything. So I think a lot of their success, I'd have to give credit to that midfield because they've just been keeping everything together, controlling the pace. Casemiro, obviously defending and doing what he needs to do, like setting up a bunch of passes, things like that. But like I had mentioned, 3-team race to the end for La Liga. It's going to be super fun to watch, just see how it turns out. Because as we've mentioned already, you mentioned it, just one slip up from any of the three, it's crazy. We can maybe even see at some point near the end of the season, kind of like that Manchester United, Manchester City, where maybe they're playing in the final game, game of the season, where maybe one or two, or maybe all three still have a chance. That would be interesting to see.
And I think Barcelona and Atletico Madrid are going up against each other in a few weeks too. So that's gonna be a really big game.
Yeah, of course. It's a race to the end. I'm just pumped that we get to see it, obviously, of course. But with that said, let's switch on to Major League Baseball and the MLB right now. We have some pretty big injury news this week with San Diego Padres shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. He's pretty much, like, you could say, the heart and soul of their team. Their young superstar. He actually got injured this week. He had a left shoulder injury after having a violent swing in an at-bat against the San Francisco Giants this week at home. And, this is really important already early on in the season because a lot of people are saying the division is between them and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And you also have to keep in mind the Dodgers have already gotten off to a really good start. A lot of people like to say that, the champions typically sometimes come back with the championship. I forgot the term, but they don't come back as strong. Hasn't been the case so far for the Dodgers, so they have the best record right now in the whole league. So no championship kind of like way back, So for the Padres, that Tatis Jr. injury could be crucial because not only does it affect their potential chances of winning the division, but maybe just even securing a wild card or a playoff spot in general. The injury, like I had mentioned, is a left shoulder surgery. I forgot. I looked into it, what the actual ligament, what it was. But left shoulder, something having to do with the left shoulder, and it's looking like he could be back pretty soon. But I've also seen rumors that potentially this could be something bigger than what they think it is, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about the injury. Do you think maybe bringing him back quicker is a mistake? Do you think they should be insanely cautious and maybe have him sit out a month or two and just make sure he completely heals? Do you think they might need to have him actually require surgery? How would you guys go about this injury situation if you're the San Diego Padres?
Well, it sucks to see a player go down with an injury, especially one with a lot of young talent like he does. But if I were the Padres, I think I would take my time with them. It's so early in the season. There's no need to rush anything right now. He's your star player. Just make sure he gets back to full health. Take as much time as you need. There's still plenty of games to be played in the season. I think he should just take his time and make sure he fully recovers before he comes back.
No, I agree with Justin. Like he said, it's still the beginning of the season, and then he has he has a lot of potential. He's only 22 years old, already a star man for the Padres. Why risk him, bringing him back early? Getting him even more injured, even though he might be feeling okay now. Maybe he's not fully injured. He ends up swinging again. He gets even more hurt. So I think they should take their time a little bit.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because it could potentially become a reoccurring issue, and obviously for the Padres, they don't want that to occur. Obviously, you don't want it to become something reoccurring because it could potentially lead to a season-ending surgery or something along those lines. But you also have to think at the same time, if they do sit them out for a month or two, or maybe even more than that, however long it takes, do you think that could potentially be the difference in making the playoffs and not making the playoffs? I will say they are a very deep team. They acquired a lot of starting pitchers that have really helped their rotation so far this year. It takes away mostly from their lineup, from their batting lineup. And down the road, I personally still don't think there's a second best team in the division that passes the Padres. But down the road, it could maybe be crucial for them making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. So would you guys still take that same stance considering that if it could potentially be the difference between making the playoffs or not making the playoffs?
Well, I think. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, so I was gonna say, like you said, there probably won't be better than the Dodgers, especially now that he's injured. But if the lineup has enough depth, you just have to trust the rest of your players. It's not just a one-man team. So I believe they can still hold that second spot in the division. And then, who knows how the season goes. The Dodgers might fall off or something might happen. Players might get injured over there. So they can bring them back later in the season and they may actually steal the number one spot from the Dodgers.
Right. And then I'd rather have him be gone for a few games and then have him come back fully healed than have him rush back and then lose him for the rest of the season, That just will make it even worse for the Padres, taking away their shot for the playoff spot.
That's true. And I mean, come July for the trade deadline, they always have that at their with them too. So if they want to make a change, if they don't want to rush back Tatis and they want to get another insurance bat that'll help them down the line, that's still an option. And it's looking like they're rushing him back. It's looking like he might be back within the next week or two. So it might not be as serious an injury that people may have expected, but there's still that nervous feeling you have if you're a Padres fan. Is it truly not that bad? You don't want it to become something reoccurring, but we'll just have to wait and see. Time will tell with how he recovers. Let's just hope him the best with his health, because as we've mentioned already, he's one of the bright spots in the league right now, one of the most young and fun, exciting players to watch right now. But with that said, that's going to conclude and wrap up this segment of the Sportsrunner Digest. Again, I'm Enrique Medina, joined by Fernando Ramos and Justin Gomez. Thank you, guys. As mentioned earlier, Roadrunners, we will unfortunately not be having an interview this week with an athlete for the Sportsrunner Spotlight, but make sure to tune in next week for that. But with that said, Roadrunners, that will officially put a conclusion to this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified for future Sportsrunner episodes. Also, you can check this episode out on our online website, elpaisanoonline.com. Don't forget to also follow us on Instagram at elpaimedia. On behalf of our team, I'm Enrique Medina. Thank you for watching this week's episode of The Sportsrunner. We'll see you next week. Peace.